By the time the HOA printed my paternity results and taped them to the lemonade stand at our cul-de-sac block party, the gospel choir from the non-denominational church on Maple had already finished Amazing Grace, the Costco sheet cake was sweating in the heat, and my neighbor Evan, yes, the one my wife was helping, was standing there with a grill spatula like a gavel. The paper said 99.97%, and the crowd acted like it was an election night map turning red. That's how suburban America delivers justice. With tri-tip, folding chairs, and a next-door thread exploding so fast your phone gets hot. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched Mia, the woman I married when we were young and weird and believed Trader Joe's frozen dinners counted as date night, bounce a baby on her hip while staring at the cracks in the driveway like they were a map out of this. Someone's kid ran through a sprinkler. The college freshman home for summer declared himself an amateur geneticist after one semester of biology, and the HOA president, who wears a whistle like he's the commissioner of sanity, leaned into the mic. Friends, family, neighbors, we're gathered here today because trust is the backbone of property values. People cheered. He meant family, but he said property values. That's the thing here. Betrayal is never just betrayal. It's a potential dip in the Zillow graph. If you're wondering how an HOA got hold of my lab results, you're not from here. We overshare. We live stream Little League and post our shame with filters. I'd ordered the test quietly, the way a man orders midnight takeout. The box slipped under the welcome mat. I swabbed in the garage with the car door open and the engine off like I needed air. I told no one. But nothing stays in the garage. The Ring camera saw me. The app misfiled the video into visitors. Evan is a visitor. The algorithm married us before the truth did, and now the truth was printed, laminated, and pinned between a lemonade price list and a flyer for a lost cat named Dennis. The verdict came first. Then, if you've got 38 minutes to spare, I'll tell you how we got there. We'll rewind through the parade of respectable lies and the lovingly curated family photos and the flavors of denial so American they could be ice cream. Vanilla suspicion, rocky road infidelity, Neapolitan regret. I'll walk you past the lawn flamingos and the tailgates and the beer league council sessions where my best friends made a flowchart labeled cheating, with arrows to gaslighting, ghosting, and maybe you're just stressed. We'll stop by the church potluck where Pastor Drew put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Forgive and forget." And I wanted to ask him if he'd ever forgotten anything that kept its hands on your wife. The baby gurgled. The neighbors whispered. Evan flipped a burger and said, "Hey, man," the casual man you give to a stranger on an airplane, not the guy whose wife has your DNA in dispute. Mia's hair was pulled back the way she does when she's sorry. She has a sorry ponytail. She also has a laugh that can start a party and a silence that can end one. I met her at a 4th of July fireworks show where she yelled, "America!" at the first blast like she'd invented it. I married her because she was brave, and because on our second date she said, "Everyone has a conspiracy theory. Mine is that most people are trying their best, and nobody knows what they're doing." And that was somehow both naive and the wisest thing I'd heard. But sometimes the conspiracy is smaller and meaner. Sometimes it's just two people and a spare key. Rewind. Months earlier, my wife told me she was helping the neighbor. It was a phrase that landed soft and innocent. Helping how? His gutters, she said. His dog, she said. His grief, she said later, when I learned his ex-wife had left and his mother had died and the house next door had become a museum of cardboard and unbuilt. Built IKEA. The first time she came home late, she smelled like sawdust and mint gum. The second time, like rain and new paint. The third time, like a story she hadn't rehearsed enough. I told myself, this is family, this is community. You want to be the guy who trusts. You want to be the man who believes in the neighborhood watch more than the neighborhood watch list. Fast forward. The night before the block party verdict, I sat in our living room while the big American flag outside slapped its own applause against the pole. I held the envelope. I could have opened it alone. I could have burned it and made my own truth. Instead, I said, "Mia." She came in wearing the oversized college sweatshirt she sleeps in when she wants to be small. "What's that?" she asked. "Science," I said. She smiled, God, that smile, and said, "You're being dramatic." "I learned from the best," I said, and that was mean, but we were past kind. When the paper said I wasn't the father, I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I just nodded like a judge at the county fair tasting pies. She cried, then laughed, then leaned in for a hug that felt like a dare. "I was helping," she said. "I know," I said. "The neighbor," she said. "I know," I said. "It's not what you think," she said, which is a sentence that has never once meant it's exactly what you think. I told the HOA president because he's also our friend, because I needed someone to call me crazy or sane, and because in this town confession is a group sport. He scheduled a community conversation. He made a flyer. That's how the verdict came first. Do I want revenge? Yes, in the small ways Americans do. The right song at the right volume when I drive by his house. The kind of haircut that says, "I'm fine when I'm not." A lawyer who calls his sweater a cardigan like it's a crime. But I'm also a father to no one, and a husband to someone who made a choice, and revenge tastes like warm beer after 2 sips. We're a family, I told myself. Even a broken family is a shape. But when the crowd cheered at the paper like it was a touchdown, I realized we were something else, a cautionary tale with an HOA permit. This is betrayal with a wristband. This is toxic love with a parking pass. You want a conspiracy? Here's one. In our suburb, people would rather watch a man lose his kid than see a dandelion on a lawn. I'll take you backward now, through the late-night whispers and the glow of her phone, and the "I'm helping, relax," and the ultrasound we never celebrated together because she said it was too early, don't jinx it, and the calendar math that didn't math. I'll show you the breadcrumb trail of infidelity dressed up as charity. I'll even give you the moment I flirted with forgiveness, the insane blink when I thought, maybe this is our origin story, maybe our family begins with a storm. But first, the party ended, and I took the laminated truth off the lemonade stand and folded it into my pocket so I could feel it cut my palm all the way home. When Evan moved in, he brought a dog named Bruce, 3 sad ficus trees, an elliptical machine he kept on the front porch like gym equipment could fill a loneliness, and a reputation he didn't earn but wore like a hoodie. Good guy, helpful, going through a lot. He shook hands with everyone like he was running for mayor of Normal. He joined the HOA safety committee and learned to say things like curb appeal and perimeter lighting, and we're a family here with the fluency of a reformed drifter. The first week, he knocked on our door to borrow a drill bit. The second, he knocked to return the drill bit and accidentally left behind a tin of cookies so perfect they looked photoshopped. The third week, he knocked to tell us he'd seen a coyote by the mailboxes, and in his eyes I saw the thrill of being the messenger. In Abrica, the man who brings the alert is a hero until he brings the wrong alert. Mia liked helpers. She believed in community like a religion. She was the person who organized meal trains when somebody got sick, who wrote cards that made you cry, who could stand in a kitchen and make a room full of women confess their secrets by listening so hard you felt heard for the first time in years. When she said, "I'm going to help him sort through boxes," I imagined her wielding a label maker like a sword. When she said, "He's trying to put a nursery together for his sister's kid when she visits," I saw those ficus trees as a sad forest in need of a fairy. When she said, "He's not eating right, I'm dropping off dinner," I pictured Tupperware like care packages from the front. She collected the helpless like projects. I was used to it. Our marriage had weathered 1,000 interventions of this kind: relatives, friends, neighbors, the odd co-worker who found his way to our table because we couldn't bear to see him spend Thanksgiving under fluorescent lights. We called it love. We called it family. Looking back, I wonder if what we loved was the feeling of being good. Then came the rhythms. You know the ones. She changed perfume. She started jogging earlier, then later. She said she was tired, then she was wired. She said she'd eaten, then she ate again. She bought new leggings. She deleted old playlists. She used the word space in sentences like, "I need some space to think about the future of our family," which is a sentence that sounds responsible until you notice the way it kneels on the word family and swears loyalty while your trust bleeds out. This is how cheating happens in the suburbs. One small yes turns into a string of "it was nothing," and the string becomes a net, and the net is cast over your life until you can't see the sky. I tried to be modern. I read the articles about toxic love and codependency and boundaries. I called my friend Marcus, who's divorced and keeps books about healing on his coffee table like they are coasters, and he said, betrayal is a data point, not an identity. We drank beer in his garage like grown kids hiding. He suggested couples therapy. I suggested a road trip, just us. Mia suggested we slow down, which is exactly what she does when she's barreling toward a decision that will rearrange the furniture of our lives. "It's not infidelity," she said once in the kitchen, half laughing, half pleading, and I thought, why is that word in the room? Conspiracies have a way of dignifying what's just trashy human behavior. But something about Evan always hummed like a power line. He had a certificate on his wall from a disaster training. He wore a hoodie from a tech company no one could visit because of NDAs, and he had that habit of looking left when he told a lie that made our dog growl, a dog that loved everybody. On Nextdoor, he asked for recommendations for quiet generators and got 20 comments in 5 minutes from men who wished they were handy. He joined our church one Sunday with the sincerity of a man trying on sincerity. He told Pastor Drew he'd love to help with the youth group once I'm through this season, and Pastor Drew clapped him on the back like he'd just signed up for sainthood. Helping is a currency here. If you can pay with labor and smiles, no one runs your credit. When Mia told me she was pregnant, she did it in Target, which is cruel because everything in Target tells you a story about belonging. The carts are red like hearts. The aisles are organized like hope. She took my hand near the seasonal end cap, throw pillows that said home in 8 fonts, and whispered, "We're having a baby." I said the right words. "Oh my God, are you serious? I knew it. I love you." I floated. We walked through the baby aisle like tourists in a country for which we might soon need passports. She held up a onesie with tiny thunderbolts and said, "This is so us." And that made me cry because she was right. We were a storm. In the parking lot, I looked up at the flag and asked America for mercy. A week later, we were at the doctor, and time misbehaved. The math was off. The dates lagged. The ultrasound was a moon that didn't match our calendar. Mia squeezed my hand too tight and said, "Cycles change." The doctor nodded in the way doctors do when they know there's a paragraph of truth behind your sentence and they don't have time to read it. That night, we ate rotisserie chicken in silence while the local news talked about a coyote by the mailboxes. Evan texted Mia a photo of a baby crib half assembled and wrote SOS, and she smiled at her phone like it had told a joke only she got. "He's helpless," she said. "We're a family," I said. "Exactly," she said. Helping the neighbor turned into a life with 2 calendars. On mine, anniversaries, garbage day, the school fundraiser I volunteered for because guilt drives charity. On hers, late-night boxes, early morning errands, don't wait up. On his, I don't know, probably the same dates but written in a handwriting I didn't teach. If there's a conspiracy here, It's not Black Ops or Deep State. It's the way good people line up their alibis with your desire to be good, then walk right through your unlocked heart with a smile. And yes, I can hear you already. Dude, you missed the signs. We all miss the signs. The signs are printed in a font you only learn to read after you've already driven past. I didn't hire a private investigator. I hired the suburbs, Ring cameras, gossip, my own insomnia, and Costco coffee strong enough to power a small city. I started with the dog. Bruce liked me more than Evan, which is the kind of omen you only respect after it's too late. I took him on long walks at weird hours and learned the rhythms of the block, whose porch light flickers, who watches TV with the volume loud enough to hear the plot twists from the sidewalk, who smokes in the backyard and pretends it's incense. The night watch taught me that conspiracy theories are born from boredom, but they mature into a terrible kind of wisdom. Patterns. Patterns everywhere. Mia's phone face down, Evan's garage door opening 3 times in 1 hour. A delivery of medical supplies that looked like plain cardboard until you saw the return address. Mapleview Women's Clinic. If I were a better man, maybe I'd have asked Mia directly. If I were a worse man, maybe I'd have tailed her car. I was the American middle. I learned how to screenshot. Marcus built me a spreadsheet. He called it behavioral observations, which made me feel like a scientist instead of a husband with a spreadsheet. We logged events, timestamps, locations. We added a plausible innocence column because even in my hunting, I wanted to be fair. You're looking for betrayal, Marcus said, but if you only look for betrayal, you'll find it everywhere. We laughed. Then we filled the cells like obsessive detectives in a Netflix show 2 seasons past its prime. The first pattern screamed. Evan and Mia were always in a radius of each other, their timelines dovetailing like a dovetail joint from one of those IKEA boxes they claimed to be building. The second pattern whispered. They were careful. The neighborly daylight, the public errands, the presence of other people as human alibis. Infidelity with a crowd is still infidelity. It just has better lighting. The break came from a raccoon. I wish it were sexier, but this is America. Our gods arrive in trash. The Ring camera flagged person detected. The thumbnail was fur. I watched anyway because I was awake and suspicious of everything. The raccoon pawed at Evan's front door, stood, looked in the window like a tiny bandit judge, and in the reflection of the glass I saw Mia, her ponytail, her sweatshirt, her hand on her stomach in that unconscious protective curve pregnant women have. She laughed, the silence-ending kind, and then she disappeared deeper into the house like the raccoon had ruled her admissible. I heard Evan's voice too clear say, "It'll be okay." And if you know anything about cheating, you know "it'll be okay" is a love letter to the future at the expense of the present. I ordered the test. I pretended I was curious about ancestry. America loves ancestry. We sell our saliva for a pie chart of origins we can argue about at Thanksgiving. I swabbed at dawn while the flag was limp and honest. I mailed it in with a prayer that sounded like a negotiation. Give me the truth I can live with. While I waited, I confronted Mia softly, then louder, then like a citizen addressing a city council where every member has already decided the vote. She said, "You don't trust me." And I said, "I'm trying." And she said, "Try harder." And I said, "I'm out of reps." This is how marriages end, not with a bang, but with reps you can't finish. There was a detour into the absurd. One night I followed a rumor to the Mapleview Women's Clinic because someone on Facebook said it was fronting for a fertility ring that swaps embryos like playing cards. That's the kind of conspiracy you mock until it sits next to you at a stoplight and you realize your wife's appointments line up with their hours. I sat in the parking lot and watched the door, and I prayed it was a mix-up, a clerical error, a donated embryo story we could spin into a sitcom we would hate ourselves for liking. But when she came out, she wasn't alone. Evan was behind her, baseball cap low, hoodie up, walking like a bodyguard who'd paid cash for the idea of chivalry. They didn't touch. They didn't need to. Some people can cheat just by sharing a hallway. Back home, I tried on revenge like a suit. In my head, I confronted him at the HOA meeting in front of the safety committee and the free donuts. I used words like family and integrity, and he folded like a beach chair. In reality, I reheated pizza and read online forums where people used phrases like toxic love and narcissistic supply and trauma bond, and I recognized none of us and all of us. I messaged a lawyer. I Googled custody. I searched, "Can you love a baby that isn't yours?" at 3:11 a.m., and read testimonies that split me in half. On Sundays, I sat in church and waited for the sermon, and when the pastor said, "Betrayal breaks what love built," I thought, yes, but some of us are contractors. When the envelope arrived, life made a clicking sound like a puzzle piece snapping where it was designed to go. Negative, not the father. A baby, a neighbor, a wife, a suburb, a cliché with a backyard. Still, part of me wanted a bigger story. I wanted a scheme, a ring of evildoers, a clear villain. What I had was smaller and pettier and more human. Two people with a shared boredom and a convenient key. It would have been easier if it were aliens, or the deep state, or some HOA-sponsored trial marriage program for community resilience. But it was just cheating, and cheating is the most American conspiracy of all because everybody knows it exists, and we act surprised every time. Marcus said, "You could still build a family," and I almost punched him because it felt like a Hallmark card hovering over a sinkhole. Mia said, "I never meant to hurt you," and I said, "That's what people say when hurting someone is a side effect of what they meant to do." Evan said nothing, because good neighbors know when to keep quiet until the block party gives them a microphone. If you're waiting for the wild reveal where the baby belongs to a secret twin or a shadow donor or a government program that recruits suburban wives under NDAs, you're going to be disappointed. The twist wasn't cosmic. It was us. The day after the block party, after the choir and the cake and the laminated truth, Mia asked me to drive. We went to the coast because in California, the ocean is where you go to argue and pretend you're meditating. She stared at the horizon like she'd lost something everyone else could see. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she said, which is the motto of every family photo album. She told me the story I didn't want, and the one I'll be telling our therapist for years. The first time she went over to help, Evan cried the kind of ugly cry that splits a person into before and after. She stayed. The second time he had a panic attack and she put a paper bag over his mouth and then they laughed, because that's something you only see in movies. The third time the power went out on our street and they lit candles and talked about their ghosts like teenagers playing truth or dare without the dare. None of that is a justification. It's an origin story of an injury. The night they crossed the line, it wasn't romance, it was exhaustion, dressed up as intimacy. They mistook empathy for permission. Some people commit infidelity like a heist. Ours was a slow burglary where everybody forgot to lock the door. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, because that was the one detail I could handle, like a math problem. "I was afraid you'd leave," she said. "I'm leaving because you didn't tell me," I said. And I heard how American that sounded. Conditional love with a clause that feels noble until you say it out loud. She nodded. "I deserve that," she said, and for a second I hated her humility more than I'd hated her lie because it asked me to play judge again when all I wanted was to be a person. We met with Evan at the park like we were doing a custody exchange in a movie. He brought Bruce, maybe as evidence of his humanity. He said he was sorry. He said it the way men say it when they mean it, and when they're also saving a piece of their dignity for later. He offered to move. The HOA doesn't have a bylaw for moving because you broke a family, but they have one about flag heights and basketball hoops, so I'm sure they'll adapt. He said, "If there's any way to fix this," and I said, "There isn't." And he nodded like he knew that line was coming and had practiced his nod in the mirror. My revenge arrived, small and private. I didn't post. I didn't smash. I canceled the streaming services we shared. I sold the grill he loved on Facebook Marketplace to a guy named Dale, who haggled me down $12 and called me boss. And that was somehow more satisfying than any speech I could make. I told Pastor Drew that forgiveness might be holy, but it's also a luxury. And he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Take your time," which is the first useful thing he said to me in a year. Marcus helped me pack a suitcase and said, "You don't have to decide the rest of your life this week." And that was an American mercy I could actually afford. As for the baby, I looked at her and she looked at me, and the world reshaped itself into a moral math with no clean answer. She didn't choose her parents. She didn't choose our block party court. She didn't choose betrayal, or toxic love, or the way adults say family, like it's a spell that can fix anything if you say it loud enough. I held her at the hospital once, before the truth, when the nurse took a photo of us and said, "Daddy's girl," and I let the word hang there because it felt good in my mouth. It still does, if I'm honest, and honesty is all I have left that's mine. I asked Mia if I could still see the baby sometimes, and she said yes, like it hurt. And I understood that her yes was another kind of apology. Evan texted me later, first time in months, and wrote, "Thank you," which is the dumbest and most accurate thing he could have said. We told the HOA we'd handle it privately. They made us a resolution anyway. Neighbors in good standing agree to conduct personal affairs with discretion, it read, as if the problem were decibels and not souls. The block party moved on to its next scandal, a short fence too close to the sidewalk. America is efficient at forgetting what doesn't trend. I started running in the mornings again. I listen to podcasts where people survive worse and sound better, and I let their voices scaffold me through the hours before work. I called my mother and told her I was okay. And she cried like I had lied, even if I hadn't, because mothers recognize performance the way dogs recognize the mailman. Here's the ending you deserve since you stuck around. I moved into a small apartment with a view of a parking lot that looks gold at sunset. I bought furniture that doesn't argue with me. I see the baby on Saturdays. We go to the farmer's market and pretend we're a family made of Saturdays, and for those hours, we are. Mia is trying to be two things at once, mother and penitent. Evan is trying to be one thing, present. I'm trying not to turn this into my identity even as I tell you this story, and watch you nod at the parts that feel like your parts. The conspiracy, if you need one, is simple. Our culture trains us to treat forgiveness as a performance and betrayal as a plot twist, when really they're both weather. They pass, they return. You adjust your wardrobe, or you don't. On the day I finally threw out the laminated test results, I folded the plastic until it cracked and snapped, and I whispered something to nobody. We were here. That's the only revenge I keep, the certainty of my witness. I loved a woman who made a bad choice with a convenient neighbor in a good zip code. I lost a family that still exists, but with new borders. I'm building something else. If you want the punchline, there isn't one. If you want the moral, it's this. In a country where we televise our pain and monetize our healing, you can still choose to be quiet, to love without ownership, to walk away without fireworks. The block party will throw confetti over your ruin either way, but the real verdict is always what you do the morning after.